A confirmation about the audio, please, guys. If the audio is clear and available, kindly confirm the same. Thank you. We shall be starting in a couple of moments. So, hello, a very warm good morning to all of you, and welcome to Baiju's Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to another session of essay, where today we shall be continuing with our endeavor to build up on the portions of the philosophical essay and develop the perspectives on the portion of philosophical essay, and then we shall be moving into the focus areas. The focus areas which are relevant for your preparation for your GS types of essays, which are the areas that you should ideally rely upon, because you cannot enter into the exam hall just with the armor that, okay, or just with the only particular weapon left in your armory, that I will be able to develop perspectives on my own. So we shall also be talking about which are those areas upon which you should do your basic groundwork. A basic amount of homework should be done on that, and some amount of material should be prepared on that, including the area of portion of Mahatma Gandhi, including the portion of education. What kind of previous year questions have been asked from that? What are the relevant quotations that we can extract from that? So that is again something that we shall be taking a look at. And the meanwhile, we shall again pick up another one of the questions which have appeared in 2022, and we shall hold that up for discussion once again. Okay, so before that, let me inquire once again any issues or any doubts that you have faced or you are facing with in that essay module in the preparation. Any areas where you feel any kind of hesitancy whatsoever, please always feel free to ask. Okay, be it about the approach, be it about the aspect of which type of topics are relevant, any issue that you are facing where you are feeling that that is something which you need to connect with, please let me know. Okay, Prashik, from yesterday not connecting to the class, so is that a network thing not connecting, or is that something else? As in, are you not able to understand what is being taught in the class? Misbah, if sometime questions are not understood. So, Misbah, that is why you have four options given in each of the sections. And out of the four options, you have to be choosing one of them to write your essay about. Okay. So, you have, that is why out of the four options, one or the other, you would be able to understand easily. Don't worry about it. So, topics which are relevant, Ilma, topics basically, see, in the present pattern, you cannot particularly say that courage, values, etc. These are the topics which are relevant. But then there are certain quintessential topics, such as you need to do your basic groundwork on the matters of education, on the matters of health, on the matters of women empowerment, on the matter relating to the quotations provided by Mahatma Gandhi. So that is where you need to be working upon. What books can one refer for philosophical based questions? So, Akula, for those, you don't have one particular book which is out there. It is basically your overall comprehensive idea and knowledge that you can bring for various different fields into the relevance of that philosophy based topic. So, the greater number of books that you study, the non fictional books, obviously, so greater number of books that you come across, the greater number of books that you study, so you will be able to provide greater perspectives. One of those books which will help you is the case of My Experiments with Truth by Mahatma Gandhi. So that book not only is very significantly rich in quotations, but it will also provide you multiple anecdotes which can be helpful in your examination. Okay. Anusha, I will give you the list of few of the books that you can read. Okay. Book list I will provide you. Don't worry about that. I'll be providing you with the kind of a relevant book list. What is required to be, or what are the various different topics that you can go through. And Kritika, I'm struggling with vocabulary. So that is the case with many of us. That vocabulary is one of those areas that we don't feel particularly good or strong about. So in those cases, I would suggest that the only solution is that it is, first of all, please understand that it is not a one-day job, that you will suddenly be able to have a very good vocabulary. And there is no shortcut. In fact, shortcut is oftentimes, I tell the candidates as well, shortcut is oftentimes the longest distance between two places. So that is why there is no particular shortcut for improving your vocabulary. The only solution is that you continue to read. You read the newspapers. And the thing is that in your preparation, you are supposed to read the newspapers anyways on a daily basis. So just the ability to carry on doing that, that in itself is sufficient to build up your vocabulary over a period of time. Okay. And while seeing the question first time, only some perspectives are arising. Right. So it is about the development of those perspectives. It is, see, the perspective development, Kirubagar, will happen only if you are much more in the practice of analyzing the questions, extracting something out of the questions. Okay. Does the life of Vivekananda book by the Eastern and the Western disciples help? Yes, it can always help. In introduction, paragraph is needed, or directly we have to complete the introduction in one paragraph. You can go for a change of paragraph if it becomes overtly long, or let's suppose you have provided a kind of an anecdotal story. After the anecdotal story, always advisable to go for a change of paragraph. Okay. And limitations is required in every essay, not in every essay, but you should be exploring the possibility that for every essay, uh, or for any topic, is there a way in which I can look at the other side of the perspective? Because majority of them, they will simply be conforming to the portion of the essay topic and simply writing out an essay out of it. So that is where, if you have the ability to look at both sides of the argument, it will be significantly helpful. Okay. I'm reading newspaper daily. Is it also necessary to see analysis of that? If you are able to understand the newspaper on your own, there is no need to take a look into the portion of the analysis. How much marks is good in an essay? Somewhere around 150 plus minus 5. That is supposed to be very good, and that is supposed to provide you with a kind of an edge. Okay. Right. Should we write headings or without headings? So as I have repeatedly told you, that it is up to you. You can provide the headings as well, but you can also go for a kind of a seamless flow without headings, with the change in paragraphs. That is also something that you can do. Okay. Can I apply more than one type of intro in a single essay, like for example anecdote as well as quotation and deliberative? You can use anecdote and direct introduction, and anecdote, direct, and quotation based introduction. All of these can be applied simultaneously. Yes. I'm facing difficulty in writing an intro, but the rest of the portion I'm writing easily. So that basically tells you what are the portion that you need to be focusing upon. You need to be focusing upon, when you take a look at the various topics, work upon and practice the area of intro itself. And don't get restricted only by writing one kind of intro. Don't get satisfied with that. Explore the possibility that for this, what are the other methods of intro that I can write? And in these cases, whenever we find difficulty in writing the intro, oftentimes it is because we are trying to recreate a story or a poem which is going to be so significantly good that it is going to stump the evaluator altogether. Don't worry about those nuances. Just start writing about the basics. Direct introduction, you start writing the direct introductions, and that is what you should practice in the initial stages. That won't give you any problem. Okay, so initially start with the direct introduction. The aspect of poem, etc., will come slowly. Brakhar, that is enough for, I read only CNA. Is it enough for current affairs? That is enough for current affairs. But newspaper reading is not only for current affairs. The day that you realize the importance of newspaper reading, automatically you will take a forward step in your preparation process and your preparation journey. Newspapers are not only there for the current affairs. If that would have been the case, why would anybody recommend you the newspapers? It is not as if the newspaper makers, they owe us some amount of commission that we will tell you that no, read the Indian Express and read the Hindu. No, because if that would have been the case, that only current affairs is the key, then everybody would have suggested to you that just take a look at the current affairs magazines, be done with it, don't read newspapers at all. But newspaper reading is much more than that. It provides you a much greater amount of help. Newspaper reading helps you analyze how to write, it helps you improve your reading skills, it also helps you understand the larger perspective rather than looking at a particular issue or a topic as it comes and then delving upon it and then forgetting all about it. If you read the newspapers, you find a kind of a flow. There will come a time after around 6 to 8 months of continuous reading where you will be able to predict that tomorrow's news is going to contain what kind of articles and what kind of articles are required to be delved deeper upon, etc. Okay. And Prabhakar, approximately how many paragraphs can we write in an essay? There is no such fixed requirement, but ideally, in every page, there should at least be one change of paragraph. Okay. And start with questions or only answer. In what case, Kumari? In the case when you are writing the essay, just note down the topic which you are going to write about and start writing. Okay. And I have read various non-fiction books, but when it comes to remembering anecdotes or incidents, I often fail. So, what is the solution? So, if you have time to recollect any of those good books which are there, you can always have the recollection of that. You can always go through that again. Or the new books that you are going through, be more attentive in that. Okay? Right? Yes, Madhur, I'll take a look into it, my dear friend. I saw the mail, I'll take a look into it. Okay. I've got 130 marks in my essay. So that is very good, isn't it? So when you are able to score that much, so that puts you in a very good stead. That means there, with a little amount of improvement, you can already understand that you are almost at the level of the average of the toppers, right? It is not the average of the entire people who attend the mains or attempt the mains examination. You are already above average in that case. So there, you just need to work and tweak upon some things, and then you will be able to cross that 140 145 threshold. Okay, can we share our personal experiences in essay on a topic, Soumya? But it cannot be done on a first person perspective. Never do that. Do we need to learn CPI and other statistics data? Because these days in newspaper, but understand this, the CPI that you are studying today, now that CPI figure or that CPI data will change again in a few months' time. So, there, rather than learning the data, look at the macro analysis. That if the CPI figure have indicated an increase, why is it so? If when we talk about the states and there the rate of inflation, why is it so that certain states such as Uttarakhand have reported a double digit rise in inflation? Why is it Rajasthan has indicated a rise? So if you understand the reason behind it, that is more than sufficient. Okay, do we need to learn? Okay, right. So, how to get annotated and phrase? Ajay, I'm unable to get your question here. What is the question that you are trying to ask? Anyways, try to ask that question again, and we will get back to your question. Okay. So, case study strategy. Case study strategy is again garnered by studying the various different books. For example, you have the book like Rebooting India. You have the book. So these books will provide you with multiple case studies. So that is where read those books, and more importantly, read the newspapers, at least the editorial section. So in the newspaper also, you will come across many such incidents of case studies which can be extracted. Okay, right. So these are the basic kinds of doubts. Any doubts in the portion about we are not able to understand what are philosophical essays, how to approach that? We have no clue about the portion of philosophical or GS based essays. Any doubt with regards to the larger picture of the essay paper that you are facing? No? Perfect. Okay. So today again we shall be working upon few of the other philosophical essays before finally jumping ship and moving into the GS based topics and analyzing which are the GS based topics that we have to look into. If we don't have time to read the multiple books, you will have time. Don't worry about it. You have a lot of time. So basically, for the books, it is no, see, generally also you would have had an experience that when you are covering the books, you would have been able to cover those non-textbooks or the books which are not required for the syllabus. They are covered at a much faster pace because that is a kind of a break from learning about the various different subject matters. So it is not required that finish these many books. Out of that, even two or one or two books that you are able to read, that in itself will put you into the habit, and that in itself many of the times is more than sufficient. So I'm not telling you to read 10 books, 20 books out there. So let's suppose you allocate 4 to 5, don't allocate it, but they should be out of sheer interest. That let's say before going to bed you have gotten into the habit of flipping a few pages, or let's say on a weekend, on a leisure time that you have, let's suppose again you will flip a few pages. So it is about gathering the idea. It is not like a book like Lakshmikant or an NCRT where when you are reading it you have to rectify or learn it. Then there is no point of reading the book. Okay, from where we get various anecdote and phrases for writing topics of essay. So that is what Ajay was getting at. So you have books such as My Experiments with Truth. You have the various books such as Freedom at Midnight, that provides you multiple different case studies and perspectives. Then you have books such as Discovery of India. You have Pax Indica. I will give you the entire list as well. Don't worry about that. Okay. Do we need to learn the basic philosophical topic? No, you don't. When writing essays in desire to write something different, always end up with nothing. How to think precisely about the topic. So always restrict yourself to the very basic, direct form of writing the essay in the initial stages. When you keep on writing, when you keep on practicing, when you get into the habit of answer writing, then that creativity will come on your own. Okay, don't worry about that. Vertical and horizontal expansion of a topic means that any topic, when it can be applied and applicable to the level of the individual, to the level of the society, the family, the level of, let's suppose, the nation as well. So that is your vertical expansion. Horizontal expansion is when you have the ability to take a look into, let's say, the political perspective, the geographical perspective, the societal perspective, and so on. Unable to find case studies from news. So for example, in the Hindu newspaper, in the op-ed page, in certain on certain days of the week, you will find a prolonged case of any larger topic that they refer to, be it the floods, which are happening in the urban areas, be it the case of lack of digital penetration in the different rural areas, be it the fiscal mismanagement of the state, how it is impacting the welfare schemes. All these are your sources of anecdotal case studies. Madhur, writing 2 essays in week is enough or need to write more? It is more than enough. Don't start to overstress only upon writing the essays. Even if you practice your answer writing skills, Madhur, that will also improve your essay writing skill. Okay. Rich dad and poor dad. Okay, that is also good. It is not bad overall. See, again, I'm telling you, if you are opening the essay, if you are opening the newspaper, that here you will have a certain section only inclusive of case studies. Here you will have a section only inclusive of quotations. That is not how it is going to be. When you open up the newspaper, it is possible that many days you won't find anything. It is possible that on few days you find multiple such quotations. Right. So in the op-ed page, op-ed section, you will find, then the in the case of Indian Express puts up the explained section there. Sometimes you will find. Then, for example, if you are reading the Hindu, then the Hindu will have the magazine section as well. Then, for example, Yojana Kurukshetra that you study, that will also provide you. So there are multiple sources, my dear friend. Case studies can also be highlighted in the portion of the introduction. Yes, spotlight section can be used. Yes, Ritika. Spotlight section in the Hindu can be used for example. Do we need to mention body intro conclusion in expansion? Absolutely not. Never do that. Okay. Now, then coming over to the initiation of our discussion. So we initiate the discussion again with a philosophical topic, and that is man's capacity for justice makes democracy possible. But man's inclination to injustice makes democracy necessary. So, first of all, what is the meaning that you can think about this particular essay? Where we get quotation to learn, will you provide us in plenty amount? I will provide you in plenty amount, my dear friend, but that will be common for all of you. So please don't restrict yourself to that. Think beyond that. So that is why daily newspaper reading that you do, I hope you do. So on a daily basis in the newspaper, within the articles, within the editorials, you will find the quotations as well. Okay. What are the keywords here? Men, capacity, justice, democracy, injustice, inclination. Okay. This phrase, best example is Afghanistan military rule. Uh, okay, justice and democracy, correct. And justice, injustice, democracy, that is correct. So here, most of you have pointed out the portion correctly in terms of the keywords. So here we will have key phrases: capacity for justice, democracy, inclination to injustice, right? These are your three different key phrases which you need to analyze here. Okay. Capacity for justice, inclination for injustice, and democracy. Now, in this, first of all, what do we understand by the meaning of the topic? So this topic has got two parts associated with it, and both part needs to be analyzed. Both part needs to be stressed upon. Yes, miss, but that is a good strategy. Just be regular with that. So here, if you understand this, so what is that particular quotation conveying to you? It is conveying to you a message that when we talk about man, now here man, does it refer to only the male gender? No, it refers to the species, Homo sapiens in general. right? So humanity is what is referred to here. So man here refers to humanity. So when you talk about the humanity, now humanity's capacity for justice is what makes democracy possible. Now, what is democracy in this perspective? In this perspective, democracy can be considered to be that particular possibility or that particular scenario where you have the downtrodden section getting justice, where you have the various different sections of society getting their voice, getting their say, and there is a kind of an equality in terms of the opportunities sought, etc. So man's capacity for justice makes democracy possible. That means, in general, when we talk about humanity, now in general, humanity is not a kind of a situation where we have an atrocious relationship with each other. Yes, there are injustices which do happen, but at the end of the day, everybody wants everyone in the society to live harmoniously and peacefully. Nobody wants, yes, you might feel a certain set of anger, maybe towards your neighbor, maybe towards someone in the society, but that is a very localized phenomena. In general, nobody likes that in their society injustice is met. Everybody wants, be it a downtrodden section or a person who you see on the street, and if somebody is actually treating them in a very harsh situation, your heart melts and you have a kind of a thinking of process going on, that what can we do in that scenario, right? So that capacity for justice, that is our intellectual and moral capacity that we are talking about. That when we think about the society, we think about the just society. We might be okay with injustice happening somewhere, but then we are never okay with injustice happening in our own backyard. So that is the capacity for justice. It is this capacity for justice which seeks to bring rights to the people, or ignored, oftentimes ignored by the society, oftentimes downtrodden by the society. So it is the capacity to seek justice for that section which makes democracy possible. Democracy is where the voice of every person of the society is counted for, is meaningful. So that is the portion of democracy that you have to talk about. But man's inclination to injustice makes democracy necessary. So, when you have an individual at a position of power, when, let's suppose, you have any individual with a greater amount of responsibility allocated to them, then there is always a greed which is associated with that. So humanity has got vices as well. So it is the virtuous part of humanity due to which democracy is possible. But it is the vicious part of humanity. The vicious part, when we talk about that tendency to grab all the attention, that tendency to go for or grabbing all the credit hogging as it is referred to, that tendency to accumulate power to oneself, that is where democracy is necessary to keep the evil in check. So the first portion talks about the virtues, virtues of humanity. Then the second portion, it does talk about the vices of humanity, for which democracy is important. And which vices are we talking about? We are talking about concentration of power, we are talking about seeking of attention, self centered, in general, greed, corruption which comes along with it, selfish, yes, inequality breeds from there. Okay, so I hope that everybody has understood the meaning or the requirement of this topic. I hope nobody gets confused by that. This statement suggests that while human beings have the potential for justice, which allows for the concept of democracy to exist, their tendency towards injustice necessitates the need for democracy as a system to ensure fairness and balance. Yes. If a king is wise, then justice can be served and people are heard, but an unjust elected leader won't be able to fulfill the democratic values. Okay, good. Labdi, I'm not able to gather what you mean by that. Negative connotation in constitution. So, until a person do not commit a crime, democracy can be taken forward. Okay, that is not exact interpretation of the topic. People abiding by the law of the land without threatening others' rights makes democracy easy. Okay. Going without laws is going back to anarchy. Violence can be sought here. Yes, Shamran, it can be. Justice is one of the roots of democracy. Can I use this as title? You can. Okay. So here, ideally, you would want to have a kind of a direct introduction. You would want to have a direct approach towards the portions that you are going to introduce about. Need fair and righteous act to do justice. Now, here, first of all, when you talk about this topic, so you need to talk about the capacity for justice. So it is the virtues of humanity which leads you there. Then various facets, so justice and democracy, you need to explore. So various facets of justice. So justice is not only one sided or mono-sided in general. You have the economic justice, political justice, social justice, and each of these are equally important. Economic justice is to remove the economic inequalities which are persistent, the economic inequalities which are prevalent. So here, removal of economic inequalities. Inequalities. Then in the political portion, you can refer to political participation, equality of in terms of representation, representation. Then you have the social portion where you talk about the social discrimination, social justice. So that is removal of social ills, social inequalities. Okay, untouchability, removal of social discrimination, any kind of discrimination. Okay, when people have coordination, then justice is possible, but when they have corruption, then justice is necessary. Okay, that is an interesting point. Equal opportunities explanation with DPSP and fundamental rights that can be done. Universal adult franchise and suffrage, yes. Then untouchability, men have the wills to form a society and protect a society, but men also want to seek profit for themselves. Yes. Gender equality, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely, yes. You can use that quotation. That quotation is very apt. And Rex lex to lex rex, okay. And justice delayed is justice denied. No, that cannot be used here. Fundamental rights keep democracy ahead. Democracy makes the justice possible, but the people tendency to greed sow the seed for injustice. Right. Okay. So here, understand why is it that we have the injustice which is handed out in the society, the injustice that we see or we observe around us. Why does that happen, or why do we end up witnessing that injustice? So it is very simply put, because of certain simple reasons. For example, any kind of social evil, any kind of social stereotyping that you see, that is mankind's own narrow viewpoint about any particular issue. Mankind's urge to concentrate the level of importance to oneself, that as a particular section of society, we should be the most important one, we should be the valued one, we should be the ones who take decisions. So that is where many sections of the society, they are disenfranchised. Many sections of the society, they have a kind of an ostracization which goes on, there's a discrimination which goes on. So it all comes from the vices of mankind. So mankind's ability to seek justice for himself or the society that a person lives in, that is prevalent. Okay. Then example of community ties can be taken here. So when we talk about living in a particular community, you will observe that in that community as well, you want to have a just scenario. Be it, even you will observe in many of the societies, be it as simple a thing as, let's say, how to handle the wildlife which encroaches, or how to take care of the nature. There also you will find that there is a general tendency to do justice. A general tendency is that everything should be just, fair and equitable. Okay. So here, this is seeking justice for others. For others. Okay. Then acceptance for a basic common set of rules which everybody can follow. And this is the bedrock of democracy, isn't it? In a democracy, you need a certain set of basic standardized rules that everybody needs to and can follow. So, this is what you refer to as the bedrock for creating equality and democratic setup. Also, you need to explore what do we mean by democratic values? What are democratic values? So, what are they? Equality, justice, equal say for everyone. Okay. Then the voice of the people given value, right? Whatever is the public opinion in the larger sense of the way, that needs to be given value of. And also administration. to serve the society. But the democratic setup will only work when you have this precondition, that adherence to the basic set of norms. So, the spirit of the law of the land needs to be equal for everyone. So, here, of law of the land needs to be equal for everyone. Okay? You might provide affirmative action here and there, but that does not take away the spirit of the law of the land. And the spirit of the law of the land, so any law of the land is established, is made to provide a better life for someone in the society itself, in the nation itself. So that is the bedrock of democracy. Adherence to minimum decorum without hurting others. So that is where you do your own thing where the other people are not hurted. So that is the basic thing that you can start highlighting, you can start explaining when you initiate the essay in the portion of the introduction and first part of the body. And many of you have put forward many of the important viewpoints, many of the important quotations rather. You can implement that. So here, yes, liberty is also something that you can talk about. So, liberty, let's suppose. Okay. Fraternity, yes. Now, in today's world, democracy doesn't mean justice for all, but rather means justice for majority. Okay. But then you can write that, but then that doesn't fit for the topic so much, does it? So that is not something which adheres to the requirement of the topic here. Equality versus equity. Okay. Significance of democracy. So here you also need to be highlighting the benefits associated with democracy. That is correct. Benefits associated with democracy needs to be highlighted here. Then after that, democracy is necessary to curb inclination to injustice. Means what? That unchecked power brings about an unchecked greed as well. The greed to accumulate power, the greed to be meaningful, and the greed to be ever self and so important. So that is where the greed is fulfilled. You have a greater, so all the various dictatorial and authoritarian regimes that you see, that you encounter across the world. Now, in all of them, you will find one common phenomenon right since the time of Adolf Hitler. You will find one particular phenomena that initially they come to power to seek justice for everyone, to seek justice for the wrongdoings which have happened or which have been happening in the society. So that is the way that they come to power. Once then they come to power, that is where, after a point of time, that power becomes a kind of an addiction and they want to hold on to that power. Now, in order to hold on to that power, let's suppose they don't develop that attachment towards power, fair enough. We have had examples in our own country. Obviously, if we take the case of ex-prime minister, that is Lal Bahadur Shastri, obviously, and unfortunately, he could not live long enough to see the fulfillment of his tenure. But throughout the annals of history, India has been blessed with many such selfless people who don't have a penchant for power. Power for them is a kind of an attribute which they have gained, and they are ready to let go of that as well, which is something that you don't particularly see very often. And here example can be taken of the ex New Zealand prime minister. You would have seen the case of Jacinda Ardern. Now she left power, she quit the office when her popularity level was at an all time high. Generally, the global leaders, you will find that when their popularity levels are higher, they go for a re-election. Take a look at Joe Biden in United States. Now, Joe Biden, even though is one of the biggest advocates for democratic setup, but observe what power does. Joe Biden already his various different sensory organs are not functioning to the best of their ability, to refer to it very mildly, and the age is not on his side. But still, at this young age of around 86, I think he's 86 as of now. So at this young age, he is gunning up and gearing up for fighting in another election and another round of presidential election, which is supposed to happen next year. So what you observe is that the penchant of for power. Why does that penchant of power comes? First of all, you have to understand that. Why is it that people want to accumulate power? Because with greater power comes greater control. You will have the ability to control the outcomes. And that is the ultimate desire for the man, for mankind. What is the ultimate desire? For us, the biggest Pandora's box, or for us, one of the biggest unicorn that we keep on chasing is that we don't know what our future is. We want to be sure about the future. How? So that is why you will find all these astrologers, all these people sitting on the roadside, setting up their shops. Their business runs profitably throughout the year, be it a recession, be it a non recession. Their shops, they run through the year, be it a COVID pandemic, be it a lockdown. Their shop will always function. Why? Now, during the time of COVID pandemic, you had people doing those online sessions as well. Why? Because as humans, we are uncertain about our future. We are not sure what the future holds for us. And that gives us anxious moments. If, let's suppose, today I tell any of you that you will clear the civil services examination with rank, let's suppose, 79. Now, if I tell you that, obviously, first thing that you will do is you will put fire to all the books. You will burn all the books. You will start enjoying life as if you have already become an IS officer. You will start using that authority even before it comes. You will start traveling through the various different places, posing as an IS officer yourself. So, why is that? Why is it that we do work for something? We want to make our future better. But then, with power comes the ability to have the creativity and decision on your future. And not only your future, the future of the larger masses. And that ability to control the future of the larger masses, that brings in the greed. It is something which is addictive. So that is why people hold on to the power for a very long period of time. Okay, I hope you are able to look at the picture here, that what is the aspect here. Okay, justice is served when own desire is fulfilled with the progress of community. Okay, but had the desires been restricted to the progress of community, then this world would have been a much better place to live in. No incident can be put as an example of injustice. You can, but you can also from here, you can extract some positives. Some positives where you had certain people basically, even though the entire no incident was filled with negatives, it showed us the very vicious side of our own very society, where how we are ready to kill each other for petty gains here and there. How we can bring our level of discourse to such a point where, at a level of disagreement over one's beliefs, we are ready to kill each other. So that is where it showed us a very vile or a vicious side of the society. But at the same time, you had many people, the commoners like you and I, many of them, they initiated a movement where they pledged that they will never allow their own land to be used for various sectarian violences, communal violences, and to divide people. So, what does that tell you? That tells you that there is the ability or the capacity to do justice. It is that capacity to do justice due to which democracy is possible. Okay, Rahul, have you met any yet? So that is a particularly personal question that you are getting into. But um, let me clarify, no, never. Because there is a matter of belief, and uh, that is all that I'll let you know. Affirmative action for equal protection of law is injustice to someone, but still just for larger masses. Okay, and justice can also be expanded vertically. Absolutely, yes. You can talk about justice at the individual level, at the level of the family, at the level of society, all of that. Okay, how the flexible Varna system was transformed into rigid caste system because of the support from the privileged categories to sustain their benefits. Absolutely, you can use that, Deepika. Very good. And China debt trap policy. How will you use that? Karl Marx theory of capitalism can be quoted here for yes, you can. So when you, if you ever get to study any of these books with Karl Marx, I get the recollection. So any of you who has read Maxim Gorky or Fyodor Dostoevsky or even Das Kapital by Karl Marx, any of you who have read these kind of books? No. Okay. So I would recommend you a book. Start with that. Okay, that is a very simple, basic book. Start with that. It is Das Kapital is something. If you read, then obviously they are going to be. It is going to be very heavy for you to say in the very modest of the aspects. But then they are communist ideology based. Fair enough. I don't want you to adhere to the ideology. I don't want you to adhere to the aspect that whatever is given in the book, I will learn the book. Just expose yourself to that side. And then after that, it is just to add perspectives to your point of view. Okay. For example, if you take the book by, it is a very good book by Maxim Gorky that I recommend. That is Mother. It is a thin book, around 190 pages, and it basically, this book was used during the time of 1905 revolt in Russia, which happened. Now, at that point of time, the various different journals, papers, etc., were not allowed to be passed, and this was to seek justice for the workers in general who would strive in very poor working conditions. So that is where these authors, what they started doing is that they started talking about the various instances, rights, etc., in the form of these written books. And these books would be supplied to the various masses. So it gives you a kind of a peeking view or a window into the past, that what was the scenario almost 100 years back. So that kind of a broader worldview you can get, or you can take a look at 1984. 1984 is a book written by anyone? Okay. George Orwell. So you can read this about these books also you can read. But and Animal Farm is a good book, very good book to read. Animal Farm in certain curriculum, that is, for example, in certain ICSE curriculum, in the certain areas, people are or the students are taught with this, right? They have to read this. So Animal Farm is where you will, yes, it is metaphorical to the next extent. And this talks about the equality. So this talks about the requirement for equality and how you will have. So you would also have read about in the portion of your polity, that prime minister is referred to as primus inter pares, right? So that is something I hope you remember when you have read the portion of polity, that prime minister is primus inter pares. So everybody is equal. Somebody is more equal than the others. Similarly, in the case of animal farm, you will get that analogy that how all animals are equal, but then some animals are more equal, means they are more prominent. So that gives you the penchant for injustice as well. So, right, my syllabus has not completed, then how can I read extra book? Okay. So if you follow this approach, my dear friend, then you will, trust me, you will never find a time to read any book in your life ever. Have you, before this, have has there been a phase in your life where you have read the books? So I'll tell you what happens. You will find large section of population who never reads any of the books. In the school days, the excuse is the same, that my syllabus is there, I will study the school books, or should I study these books? Then after that, when you go for your graduation, I'll study for graduation, or will I be wasting my time on these books? After that comes the portion of job, where I have to do my job, I will concentrate upon that. I get little relaxation time. So will that be wasted on the books, or will I concentrate on something productive? Then comes the preparation for civil services. I have to prepare for the civil services. I have to read Lakshmikant, etc. When will I find the time to read the books? So that goes on. So that is why I will tell you that you find time if you want to have time. Okay, there will be days of the week, and trust me, and for this you don't need to need yourself to tell me that in a candidate's time period for a week, it is never the case that the candidate is continuously sitting in front of the textbook. That is never the case, right? It is never the case that throughout 7 days a week consistently you are sitting in front of the book. If that is the case, then there is a very high degree of inefficiency which is associated, because every time that you are sitting in front of book, not necessarily you are reading that. And you, whenever you have the leisure time, obviously priorities do matter. So fair enough, it's your choice. If you don't want to read these books, don't worry about it. But then please understand that it is something which will add to your perspectives, your overall set of information, your overall set of ideas that you can represent. Because do you think that when you go to the interview panel, how is it that few candidates are able to score 210, and how is it that majority of the candidates they score in the range of 150, 160? What do you think creates that difference? Do you think that difference is created by someone being able to answer what is a joint session of the parliament, what is it that Raja Ram Mohan Roy did, and what is it that Subhash Chandra Bose did? Do you think that is the kind of perspective that they are looking in the interview? Never. They are not looking for bookish knowledge. Just to give you an idea, Das Capital is readable, but then it is very heavy. It is very, very heavy. If you want to read the book about Buddha, then read the Sanchipt Buddha Charit. So Buddha Charit is a very nice book that you can study, where you will find various different anecdotes, and you can find various different Jataka tales as well. Okay, and when Gandhiji supported Nehru for prime ministership, even when votes were in favor of Sardar Patel, isn't it not inclination for injustice? So that is where, see, please don't go into these areas, because that is where it can be a portion where you might tick off the evaluator. Don't take that risk. Here it is okay to ponder with your belief systems, but you never know what is the belief system that the evaluator follows. So please don't. Okay. And Mrityunjay, in ancient times like Akbar, justice is promoted without democracy, like abolition of jizya. So for justice, democracy is always necessary. Okay. But that is not always the case. In the case of when you're talking about the reign during the monarchs and the kings, you can have endless examples of how injustice would prevail significantly. Akbar's one move of welfareism is remembered till date of how good he particularly was. If you count any government in modern post independent India, any government in power, they would have taken many different welfare measures. So that is where, in a kind of an autocracy, in a kind of a monarchical setup, you don't have that ability to deliver justice on a day to day basis. Okay. And can we use Jan stories as anecdotes? Why not? Absolutely, yes. From mythological aspect to the religious aspect, anything. Okay. Book name for Buddha. So, okay. Any of you have read this? Buddha Charit. You have the Sanship, the Buddha Charit as well. Any of you have read this? It is a good book to read. Okay, you can read that, right? And men search for their meaning. Till now, how many books have you read roughly? See, I am not as busy an individual as you guys, so I have a lot of time with me to be able to read books. So that is why almost on a weekly basis I do go through a book. Presently, I am going through a book which has been written by Rakesh Sood, our ex Raw chief, and there you have some wonderful insights about how you have the global geopolitical play about the portion of the intelligence agencies, how they play into each other's backyard, and that book is The Unending Game by Rakesh Sood. So any of you, whenever in life you find time, so you can also go through these books. So, but then it is a matter of personal choice. So, right, in 1911, when Bengal was partitioned and Raksha Bandhan was intensively used as a symbol, dip in Ganga, a gesture of fraternity, can be used for historical perspective. Good. Now here, when we expand this topic, let's say we have already talked about at the level of the individual, we have already talked about at the level of the society. So here, when we talk about at the level of the nation state, can we think about this particular topic at the level of the nation state? If yes, fill us with the perspectives. Okay. China exercising power in Africa. Good. Sovereignty. Rahul, first of all, let me go through that book, then I will recommend to others. I generally don't recommend books that I have not gone through. So, your friend Rahul is suggesting you a book, Kabhi Gaon, Kabhi College. So, I have not gone through the book. So, I'm not in a position to recommend to the others. Example of Myanmar. Okay. But then I think, Amrit, your example of China's role in the international geopolitics, that can be very, very relevant. Sapiens is a very good book. If you get a chance to read Sapiens, absolutely you should go for it. In the initial portion itself, it hooks you on. So, Sapiens is a very good book. So, at the level of the nation state, when we talk about the nation state here, for example, actions by a nation towards others, by the way, towards others, right? So initially it might come out with a capacity to create or do justice, but then after some time it morphs into that tendency or that penchant for power, that greed for power, that desire for power, that desire for feeling self important. And that is where you have injustice which is met out, injustice which is handed out. So for this, you can also take the case of supposedly the most democratic country of the entire world, and that is United States. Now, United States, over a period of, let's not go into the history about what United States has or what the founding fathers of United States they have done to the indigenous community. Let's not go into that past or that part history. But what United States has done in, let's say, its relationship with Mexico for the past century, what it has done across the world, and forcing regime changes, what it has been doing even presently, where you have the tacit hand of the state always behind. For example, again, because I have mentioned the name of the book that I am going through, I will take an excerpt from it where CIA has officially admitted that in countries like India, it has gone on to publish more than 1 lakh articles in various newspapers indirectly in order to influence the decision making process of the people. And the KGB of Russia has done the same. So what United States does to change the regimes of the various countries, now the outcome is something which it wants desirable to itself. Right? That is why it is doing so. That is why it morphs the public opinion in many of the cases. So, for example, observe, yes, Saddam Hussein was not a very good guy. But then what happened to Iraq after that? What Iraq had to suffer just because you had the United States willing to declare a war because it was not happy with Saddam Hussein putting a cap on the oil supply. What United States is doing in ignoring all the wrongs done by Saudi Arabia because of the virtuous oil supply link. So that is where you can take the example of these countries. How China came to countries such as Sri Lanka, such as Pakistan. Why? In order to provide them opportunity for economic prosperity. But what is the end result of that? The end result is that China is annexing some of these areas. So does that take us to the past and the colonial history? Can we talk about the colonial history? Isn't that how all the colonialism and imperialism that we witness around us, isn't it how that all germinated? Okay. Ajay, that is an example, yes, but then that example about Imran Khan government in Pakistan. So it is not the doing of only the United States. It is the Pakistan deep state which is at work there. So Pakistan deep state in itself is a kind of a myriad where you don't get and think about it like an illusion. So that is the working of that as well. So you cannot squarely lay the blame on the doorsteps of United States. But for example, take the case of Osama bin Laden. Now the propping up of Osama bin Laden was a work of United States, where you had the Mujahideens who started fighting a war or who were brought in from countries such as Cyprus, from countries such as Saudi Arabia, from countries such as Indonesia. All of them were brought in Afghanistan to fight whom? The Soviet Russia. Now, understand, Soviet Russia was capturing Afghanistan in order to do in order to reach the region of the Arabian Sea. But what United States did as a result to bring justice, it brought all the vicious forms of terrorism into that land of Afghanistan. More so, United States then finally called all these mujahideens into US. Try applying for a US visa today. You have more than 500 days of waiting period. But all these mujahideens, they got that US visa more or less, and they trained in US. Many of them were called to the White House, and President Nixon at that point of time, he equated their contribution or he equated their personality to the founding fathers of United States. So that is the extent to which United States can go in order to fulfill its own aims. Right? So you have a lot of these examples. You can take the case of colonialism and imperialism. Now, the basic idea or the basic purpose that the colonial powers, in order to justify their actions, what they did was basically to say that, look, we are here to spread civilization, we are here to spread culture. God has given us with that foresight and that culture and civilization. We are more blessed than you are. So we are here to spread that way of living. For them, we were all savages. We were all the local people who did not know how to live. We had a thriving civilization thousands of years before their land was even inhabited, and before the land was converted from only marsh and mud. We had a thriving civilization, but nonetheless, that is the ideology, that is the argument that all the colonizers use. So you can use that how this can be a pathway for neo colonialism. Yes, Karan, good. And Confession of Economic Hitman by John Perkins, yes. And Prakhar, can we also tell about World War II happened as Hitler removed democracy and became dictator? That is not why World War II happened. If Hitler would have been democratic in his own country, do you think World War II would not have happened? World War II would have happened anyways, because at the end of World War One, first of all, the way in which Germany was treated, that was unfair. But just because a country is treated unfairly does not give you a precursor or an argument where you, out of the victimhood and victim ideology, you want to kill others. So it is that victimhood which prevailed in Germany significantly. That is something which instigated them, right, to respond. For example, that victimhood mindset is also being promoted for a large amount and for some time now, almost more than 2 decades now. That victim mindset is being propagated in China, right? In PRC, that is People's Republic of China. Now that victimhood mindset is that, see, all these powers, they have oppressed you, they have oppressed you for hundreds of years. So now is the time to take the revenge. That is the victimhood ideology. The ideology that you will find in many of the sections in our society as well. But that victimhood ideology will never take any society forward. The mindset should be like that, what you see in the case of Japan, where from an imperialistic Japan, they went for a technological prowess. They are still leaders, one of the leaders of the modern world, but based purely on their desire to improve and perform. Okay. And victimhood is used for radicalism, fundamentalism, communalism. Yes. Okay. So that is where you can use it at the national perspective. You can talk about the damages of authoritarianism, dictatorship, etc. And the checks and balances, they can be kept in perfect place if you have democracy. Why? Because democracy has got various institutions. So before coming to that, when we are talking about the perspective at the level of the nation, so here, what can you elaborate upon? So that is what gives us the requirement for a better global governance setup, a democratic global governance setup. So presently, when we talk about why is it that India wants to be so much a part of the Security Council in UN. Now, at one point of time, India was offered a seat. We declined it, but now we want that. Why? Because roughly 18% of the population across the world is India and Indians. So here we need to have our say. Similarly, there needs to be a representative from South America. There needs to be a representative from the region of Africa. So that is where the setup is not democratic. So when the setup is not democratic, what happens is it is very easy to flout those global norms set by United Nations, because it is easy to assume that United Nations is working at the behest of the United States. So that is where it is very easy for everyone to violate that. Had this been much more representative, much more democratic, then that capacity to do injustice, inclination for injustice, that could have been brought to a check. Okay, I hope you are able to link that up, right? Then, role of China in least developed nation through the policy of debt trap. Yes, you can talk about that with examples. You can talk about that. Hambantota port, one of those. Okay, as Germany was treated in the past, as similar things are going to be doing the same thing for Russia by eliminating from everything. Yes, the global ostracization that is being met out to Russia, and Russia being painted as a perpetual enemy from day one without understanding their concern and bringing NATO directly to the footsteps or the doorsteps, which makes them which they makes them quite nervous. That is absolutely not the right thing to do, because the NATO alliance today, they might have a different narrative, but they were very close to installing missile installations at the border of Russia. So that is never good for maintaining fraternity. Okay, WHO inclination towards China. Okay, right. So here, checks and balances are best in a democracy by the establishment of setups, establishment of institutions. Okay, by the establishment of institutions that you have. Then, after that, eventually conclude by explaining how justice is the foundation of democracy and how democracy is the only setup which can help the society or prevent the society from going into the phase of tyranny and injustice. Instilling democratic values at an individual level will instill a greater democratic setup in the society. A democratic society overall forms the foundation or the bulwark for the democratic nation. And any nation which is democratic and has democracy to its roots, not only in the form of government, so that nation will never allow injustice to happen anywhere. So this is where you can also quote Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. famously quoted that lack of justice anywhere is injustice everywhere. So it is not as if you have injustice happening in some portion, let's suppose in some part of the country, rest of the part of the country can go happy to sleep. No, that is not the case. So if you don't have justice which is given in any particular portion, that is basically injustice to the entire society. That is where the entire society should be learning from that. Okay, if democracy is the worst form of government, but we don't have an alternative. Yes, that is also a quote that you can use. And how to contradict these kinds of topics where the quotation itself has two dimensions. This topic is not something which requires a kind of a contradiction for that matter. This topic, if you try to contradict it, in a way you are supporting authoritarian and tyrannical regimes. So I would advise you not to go for that. Not understood the UNSC of India. Okay. So, okay, you will, I don't want to get into the territory of IR, but then you would have, you will study about this in greater detail in the portion of IR. But we were talking about the requirement of a democratic global governance setup. And that global governance setup, when it is there, that is when you will find that there is a greater adherence and following of the rules and the norms as well. So India as of now wants to, and for some time now, for almost 2 decades now, India has been trying to get a seat at the United Nations Security Council. And that seat India is seeking on which grounds? It is not seeking it on the grounds that we are now the fifth largest economy or the 10th largest economy. We have so many people, we are democracy, etc. No, it is seeking that seat because Indians, they represent almost 20% of the entire global population. So one out of every five or six individual across the planet will be an Indian. So it will be a gross injustice if that voice is unheard and unrepresented of. So that goes against the democratic ethos. Because when we talk about democratic ethos, what do we talk about? That voice of everyone should be counted. So you cannot have the voice of everyone counted and then you can ignore the voice of a large country like India, the entire voice of South America, the entire voice of Africa, because you don't have UNSC representatives from these continents either, right? So you don't have any United Nations Security Council representatives either from Africa, either from South America. So where does the voice of the global South come from? And by South, I don't mean Southern Hemisphere, I mean the developing and underdeveloped nations of the world. So they don't have any say in what goes on in the global discourse or what goes on in the global affairs. So whatever decision the Security Council takes, it is a very clear understanding for everyone in the world that this represents only a few voices. So it is very easy to ignore them. So when, let's say, UNSC puts a sanction on Russia, Russia will choose to ignore it. That, okay, it is only United States and United States stooges who are saying so. I don't care for that. That is why Russia will take part in the BRICS summit. Russia will take part in the SCO summit. But Russia is ostracized from all the portions where United States is a member. So how do you add credibility to that? That is where there is a greater inclination for injustice by the other nations as well, because the global governance setup in itself appears to be undemocratic. Okay? Now, can we include the Bangladesh freedom from Pakistan? You can. Now, let us build on another topic. So, here, the past is a permanent dimension of human consciousness and values. So, think about it. The past is a permanent dimension of human consciousness and values. So, what do we understand by this topic? First of all, and secondly, what are the keywords? Yes, you can quote Gautam Buddha here. Past is base for what human thinks and do today. Okay. Past experience which develops our culture. Okay, which develop belief system. Past experiences provide a base for the future development and experience, like India's experience of colonialism. Good. Learnings from the past. Yes. Becoming vigilant from past experiences, human consciousness and value. Okay. Present is made on the basis of the past. Good. We had discussed about Friedrich Nietzsche as well. Friedrich Nietzsche has given multiple quotations in this regard, that how our present and the future actions are purely a sum product of our past experiences. Okay. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. Yashpal, that is a very good thing to talk about, a very interesting take rather, but that goes more on a slightly perverse side, in the sense that that talks about your inclination to do injustice, in the sense that when you are thinking of controlling the present and controlling the past, you are thinking of controlling the narrative. And when you are thinking of controlling the narrative, that comes with the accumulation of power. So let's not go into that. You can explore us. Don't restrict your thought process. You can think about it. Past experiences is the base for future actions. Yes, our values and consciousness in determined by our past experiences. Okay. Past is a character of the present. Okay. Or can we have, Ajay, rather than this, that present is the character or some product of the past? Right? Ilma, past experiences decide policy towards China. Okay, good. So most of you have understood the meaning of this topic. Human experiences shapes its present beliefs and consciousness. So The past here, when we talk about it, the past, it is what? It is the lived experience, it is the inherited wisdom or knowledge that we have, it is the inherited perception that we have, the gained perception that we have, the inherited experience that we have. For example, let's suppose when we talk about the social ills or the social discrimination in the society. Now, that social discrimination, many or let's not talk about let's talk about stereotypes. Now, in the society, you come across various different stereotypes, various different superstitions. Now, many of you would not have faced the direct consequences that, okay, a cat crossed the road, so something bad will happen. Okay, a cat crossed from right side, a cat crossed from left side, so this will do some good or bad, whatever that superstition holds. Many of you would not have encountered the outcome of it, but you still believe that, many of you. Why? Because it is an inherited superstition. It is a kind of an inherited knowledge, right? You have taken from your elders. So the past here needs to be explored first of all. That is the most important, significantly important keyword, even amongst the keywords. This is the most important keyword here. Okay, most important. Learning from the past, consciousness and values help our today. Yes. Experience of the past can we can do better in the future. Yes. Whatever we experience, which give us some way to understand. Okay, past is the teacher. Yes. So permanent dimension of human consciousness means it is a permanent deciding factor. It is perpetually present, right? So what you have represented as the actual basic meaning, that will stand true, that the past, in a way, it represents the permanency of, or it is always going to be a major dominant or dominating factor in deciding about the future course of action. Okay, and the present action as well. So what is the role of the past in development? So here, what do we mean by the past needs to be explored? So experiences, inherited and gained, perceptions, again inherited and gained, right? Then the past is also something driven by information, knowledge, information gained and acquired. Acquired, basically, acquired, and the other one can be inherited, right? So this is where knowledge can even be perceived from others. Okay, so this is the aspect of the past. Any other portion that we can add while we are elaborating the past here? Any other portion? Biggest blunder of the past was women's suppression, which led to the women's most time spending on kitchen as the sole role. So it is not the biggest blunder of the past itself. It is something which is perpetuating even to the present. And going by the present scenario, the kind of oppression done for towards women, not only in one part of the world but across the world, that is going to perpetuate for many generations in the future. And in that, the role of woman is also something. So in that case, see, you will always come across, when we talk about the patriarchal setup and how it breeds from one generation to another, how it is given a fresh lease of life. That is where also the past is the dimension of the present actions that the women take. So if you go to any of the rural households in any of the states, I'll not take the name of the state because obviously people get hurt, sentimentalities get hurt, so I'll not talk about it. But then you have various different states which are not very well known for being equal towards women and giving power to women. So when you go into any of these households, you will see the worst form of patriarchy being met out. But you ask the elder women in the household, they will always tell you that they are doing justice to their daughters in law, right? Why? Because they think that their past was much more atrocious. They are being much more liberal. So that is where it is the past which have and the past experiences which are driving them towards it, which are driving them towards doing injustice even today, but thinking themselves to be liberal nonetheless. So that is the permanent dimension in the present day value setup that they have inherited. Okay. Past events, so experiences, they come from the events as well. Good. So those can be from the gained portion. Yes, Anusha, correct. Past is like the image of your present, like judgment of any state or country conditions. Past events also, yes. Then values of past leaders suggest just path in our lives. Okay, yes. Like Sarpanch Pati in case of patriarchy. Yes. So here, when we talk about it, why is the past the dimension of our consciousness and values? So here, when we talk about, let's say, value system. So values here, we have already talked about it. These are the attributes which are considered to be very virtuous, behavioral attributes, or rather the system of beliefs which are considered to be ideal. So those are values. These themselves keep on changing. And these are driven by the past experiences that you have. So what is the role? So is the word permanent okay here? So that also needs to be explored. That is the case that the past will always be a key determinant in taking the future decision. It is not always so. So you have significant departures from that. For example, the learnings from the past. So that is where the present consciousness and values, they don't represent what the past was. They don't represent our future decision making. So the learnings from the past, right? So there, for example, take the case of untouchability, take the case of slavery. Now, in all these cases, you will observe a kind of a significant departure from the past, right? Now, we can also be the prisoners of the past. You have to explore even that direction. So, when we are prisoners of the past, what do we mean by that? That you are still caged in the past ideas. So, in history, you would have studied the consistent tussle between the reformist and the revivalists, right? Where the revivalists, they wanted to revive the past customs and traditions. They did not want to adapt to the newer ways of life or the newer realities of the world, right? I'm not saying anything here. I'm not going whether the revivalists were good or whether they were bad, but generally that is what getting stuck in the past. So here, for example, you have the very common phenomena of glorification of the past, that the past was so very beautiful. At one point of time, we had such a good thing, we had such a good fortune. Now, while that can provide the much needed aspiration and directionality to the nation, but also it provides a kind of a veiled logical argument that every misdoings of the past are justified even today because the past was glorious, right? Because at a long time back, around hundreds of years back or 1,000 years back, we did this in the society. The society went through the worst phases of oppression within themselves. Women were not given rights, but then we had a glorious past. So if we do that today also, we will attain that glorious future. While we are nowhere going to attain that glorious future, we are going to continue to perpetuate that kind of inequality, isn't it? Take the case of the movement which women carried out in Iran. Now, in Iran, you had a large scale participation of women in the protests. Now, that in itself was very unprecedented for a country like Iran, which has a severe clampdown, and the laws made again have been very severe. And all that protest started why? Because you had one of the young female participants who basically was unable to survive whatever the judicial or the police custody meant for her. So she perished, and that angered the entire nation. So, there also, as the authorities were trying to curb down the protest, they were consistently harping upon how the past was glorious by following certain set of ideals, by following a certain norms of morality. The past could be much more glorious. So when you are a prisoner of the past, you provide a kind of a tacit agreement for perpetuating the discriminations, the ills in the society, as we have already talked about that. For example, in the Matsya Puran, wife beating is something which is advocated. Now think about it. When you think about glorification of the past, are we talking about the glorification of this aspect as well? So that is where the inequalities they breed up. Okay. Yes, the moral policy policing issue. Necessity is the mother of invention, because people understand we need some changes in the past time. Because of that, the present we see some changes. Yes. So then, what are consciousness and values? Consciousness, awareness of thoughts, feelings, and the environment. Then these are shaped by the perceptions, what we perceive, and what we perceive can be based upon our own level of experience, can be influenced by what we see around us as well. Then these are our guiding principles for the course of action. Okay, before I forget, on Monday, our class was cancelled because of certain personal reasons from my side. So we shall have an extra session on Saturday morning. And Saturday morning, we will try to keep the session from around 7:30 for 3.5 hour session. And don't worry, if the portion is completed earlier itself, we will end the session early itself. But Saturday is when we will be keeping that session, and that will be the last session. Okay, so that is a minor announcement for everyone, that the class which was cancelled on Monday, we will keep it on Saturday, mostly at around 7:30. The details of the timing I will announce in the session tomorrow also. You will receive the mail as well. Okay, so that is when we'll keep it. Okay, so for the course of action to be taken in the future as well, 7:30 will be good. Okay, we'll decide on that. Then these consciousness and values, they are important because they shape the thinking of the society. They shape the presence of the entirety of the society in itself. Even this is something which can even work in family bonds. In many of the families you will find, so that is me extending it on the vertical aspect, that you will find it that in many of these families there is a greater reservation for going for a nuclear family, for going for, you will find in many family setups, people are not encouraged to out migrate to various different areas. That read in a college here itself, even though that college is not very nice, read it here itself. Why will you go outside? Because nobody in the family has gone abroad, or nobody in the family has gone out. So that is where the importance needs to be understood, it needs to be felt, it needs to be realized. So that is basically the importance of shaping the future action and the future course. Historical perspective, you can take that Indus Valley town planning has been given to us as a kind of a past consciousness and values. Even today, many of the habitations that we have, they end up representing the mere reflection of the town planning that we saw thousands of years ago, the nature worship that we had, the lifestyle that we had. Now that continues, so that is a kind of a permanent dimension even in our present consciousness and values, right? So you can talk about the nature worship, festivals and practices in various parts of the country. You can talk about the intricate relationship between our food habits and the coexistence that we have as a society. Then the Vedic civilization, the lifestyle, that is the minimalistic lifestyle that now, regardless of the sect, regardless of the religion, regardless of the region, regardless of the area of the country that we belong from, we all have to agree that everywhere across the country, you will find that people have a kind of, in our country, I'm not talking about the world, in our country, people believe in having a minimalistic lifestyle, that the need should be fulfilled. Greed is something which will spoil us. And that is common across the entire stretch of the country, whichever part of the society we belong from, whichever part of the country we belong from. In all our places, you would have seen people like to live a minimalistic lifestyle. That is something which we have attributed from the Vedic times itself, or thousands of years back. That has been a kind of a desire as a society that we have inherited. And that is even where, as a society, we have inherited the desire to do justice to each other, even though that desire is being tested and has been tested multiple times in the history as well. But then that is a continuous desire which does exist. Okay, then the aspect of Satyamev Jayate, right, or truth always triumphs, that is taken from the Mundaka Upanishad. So that is something which can be used as the past. Now Vasudev Kutumbakam, that is again our past being present. So even today, regardless of whether we have food for ourselves or not, if a guest comes in, we basically treat them well. Atiti Devo Bhava, right? So we believe in treating the guests very, very well, much more than our own capacity. We might go hungry, but then the guests should never go empty bellied. So, what is that again? That is your past determining your present consciousness and values, your value system. Okay, then globalization, which is induced by Vasudev Kutumbakam. That is where Vasudev Kutumbakam is what? The entire world is our family. Now that is represented in even our present set of ideals of unity in diversity. That is set, or one of the deciding forces in our global foreign policy that we have, foreign policy approach, our humanitarian and disaster relief operations that we carry out in the far stretches of the world are driven by this principle. So our past belief is a permanent dimension in our present value setups that we have. Now, impact, what is it? So, the traditions that prevail from one generation to another. So, there are only two such civilizations across the world which are considered to be living civilizations. That is the Chinese and the Indian. We are amongst the only two civilizations which are considered to be living civilizations, because thousands of years we have passed on the set of ideas, information from one generation to another generation to another generation, right? So that is where the traditions are kept alive. Then religious scriptures are also there, which consistently they harp on the past, they give us an idea about the past. And that is where sometimes the negative aspect also comes in, that is the glorification of the past. Now glorification of past is never bad, Glorification needs to be carried out in order to provide a directionality to the society, in order to provide the directionality of where the nation is going to progress. You need to have some glorification of the past, that we need to attain that. So that is a goal setting. But when you get trapped in that vicious cycle, then you perpetuate injustices and inequalities as well. So you can talk about how the past has shaped our present value system in the constitution framing and the constitution making as well. So you can talk about the various Gandhian principles which have been a part of the DPSP, that is the directive principle of state policy. So for example, equal pay for equal work, right? The promulgation of let's say village cooperatives, panchayati raj, then taking care of nature. Now nature care and taking care of nature is something which has been enshrined in the constitution, and that has been a part of our past system as well, right? So local self government, gram sabhas and panchayat. Now earlier also, the past also, you had the situation where generally the merchants, they were the ones who kept who were in charge of developing the public infrastructure, who were in charge of building the temples, the places of worships that you have. And they were also the merchants, the bankers of the earlier times. You had, for example, Virji Vora, etc. You had the Seth brothers. Now all these were the rich merchants who would finance not only various kings, but who would also end up financing the various different, let's suppose, welfare mechanism, like feeding the masses, etc. So that is something which was always prevalent. And even today, it is perpetuated by the CSR, the corporate social responsibility. So even today, we expect our industrialists, the people who make money, to create or give back to the society by the help of the public infrastructure. The food habits, dressing style, everything is something where the past has been a consistent dimension. Now, there you have areas where it has got a perversive meaning as well, and it has perpetuated in our life system as well. That is the caste system and the superstitious beliefs that one follows. Okay. Then relationship with Pakistan, China. Take the case of Pakistan and China. Now, regardless of whatever we might say, regardless of whatever we might believe, but our relationship with Pakistan or our relationship with China is never considered in isolation from the past misdoings that they have done or the past bitter experiences that we have faced. When we talk about Pakistan as a country, there is a greater amount of hostility. That level of hostility you did not have in the society in the 60s. That level of hostility towards Pakistan you did not have prior to the 71. Why? Up till the early 60s, you still had people being able to move across the border very easily. That level of hostility kept on increasing. It increased during the 65 war, further increased during 71, then further increased during the Khalistan movement, then further kept on increasing as and when you had various incidents of bomb blasts, terrorist activities on our soil, parliament attacks, Kargil war. Level of hostility has kept on increasing. Now, here what has happened? An individual attack might not vitiate your thinking that to that extent, might not make you that angry, but our entire national consciousness is where it is building up. It is building up on all the things which have happened. So when we think about a nation like China, or let's say when we think about a nation like Pakistan, immediately we start thinking about that. Okay, earlier also they had done this, then also they had done this, then also they had done this. So that is an accumulation. So our past is something which is bogging down the relationship. Can we grow as a region if we have very hostile relationship with our neighbors such as Pakistan and China? We can't. Because when we talk about the regional connectivity in the entirety of the world, this is the region with the least amount of interconnectivity. And that is something which can boost our economic growth significantly if we have a better relationship. But it is our past which is bogging us down. And by past being a consistent dimension. So that is where this topic, while it is true, it can also be detrimental. Similarly, if you take the relationship between Russia and US, now Russia and US during the Cold War, obviously they were antagonistic. After the Cold War, there came a time or a period of a brief interregnum of good relationship, but then they always saw each other with a kind of a suspected eye. Why? Because the past was a consistent dimension. The past never allowed them to come out of each other, right? So that is how the past can sometimes be an impediment to the future growth. And for that, the past is a dimension that we need to consider. Okay? Yes, like 2611 attack, all those. Okay? Now, that is the topic here. Now, changing trend of Maoism, not only changing trend of Maoism, take the case of the public opinion towards Maoism. Now, I'm sure all of you, so again, I will recommend another book. I don't know how many of you have read it. Many of you would have read it. Have we read this book by Kobad Gandhi? Hello, Buster. Oh, okay. If you get an opportunity, you can read this book as well, which talks about how basically the entire ideology of the Naxal movement, the Maoist movement, which was prevalent during the 60s, how that has changed and how it has changed in the modern world, where now they are simply thought about and they have been resorted to. So, generally, you would have seen that at one point of time, 20 years back, the red corridor or the Naxal affected area would continue all the way from West Bengal, Jharkhand, Bihar, parts of Uttar Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka, even Kerala. The entire stretch referred to as red corridor, the forested area. Now you have few districts left in few of these states. Why? Public sympathy has declined. Why? Because in the public mindset, in the public consciousness, the past is now a permanent dimension in their determining their present value setup. That is where they have had an experience that what has happened in the past in the name of Naxalism was pure extremism, extremist behavior, where you are killing innocent civilians, where you are killing politicians just in order to prove a point, where you are killing the security forces. So that is where the present value setup doesn't allow that ideology to perpetrate or perpetuate anymore because of the past experiences. Okay, so if you ever get an opportunity, do read this book as well. So this is also a good book that will give you insights about, so all those of you who are worried about whether my course syllabus will be finished or not, so think about it that this will help you in your portion of internal security. Okay, so that is where it is by Kobad Gandhi, so it will help you. So it is an account by Kobad Gandhi. It is basically written by Rahul Pandita. So that is the book by. It gives you an account of you had this Maoist couple, that is Kobad Gandhi and his wife. Both of them, they were part of the Maoist struggle. So that is where this book comes from. So you can study that. Okay. So, moving away from the past, slavery and racism towards equality, role of women, increased labor force participation. Then take the case of China and Russia. From ardent and stringent followers of communism and closed economy, they have moved towards a kind of a liberalization, intercaste marriages, globalization. We are moving towards protectionism again. So these are departures from the past. So I hope you are getting an idea about what needs to be written in this particular essay. Yes, homosexuality is one of those where we are moving forward. Okay. So then we come to another topic. I want you to think about it, and we take a break meanwhile. So, need brings greed. If greed increases, it spoils breed. Think about this. We'll take a break for 15 minutes and we'll be back in 15 minutes. Okay? Yes, Anusha, it is by Rahul Pandita. I've written that. A confirmation about the audio, please. If the audio is clear. Prashik, I have tried everything but not connecting the class. Prashik, is the issue still prevalent or is this? So, if you have an issue which is persistent, I would urge you to please bring that to the notice and attention. Immediately send a mail to IS Life, and also the SMEs will take care of that. And now, coming to this topic again, need brings greed. If greed increases, it spoils the breed. So, people should be content with what they have. Once they get greedy, their offsprings learn the same. And this may lead to exploitation of the weaker sections. That is one of the interpretation. What are the keywords, first of all? The keywords are need, greed, and breed. Ilma, I'm facing an issue in connecting to the mentor since last 13 days. Please immediately, Ilma, send a mail to me. Okay, I will take it up. And I hope you have my mail ID. So send me a mail, I'll take it up. It will be resolved. Don't worry. Okay. So now these are your three keywords which are there: need, greed, and breed. So need brings greed. If greed increases, it spoils the breed. So, what is need, what is greed, and what is breed? That needs to be explored. That needs to be understood. So, here, when we talk about it, so first of all, when we talk about, let's say, the importance or the relevance of need. Now, any action that any of us we take, any action that is carried out, that is entailed by the requirement of fulfillment of need, isn't it? For example, when people they seek the availability of jobs, the problem of unemployment. Now presently China is going through one of the worst phases of unemployment, where around quarter of their youthful population they are not able to find any jobs. So why is it that people need jobs? Is it because they do need something to keep them engaged? Is it because they require that job in order to have something to do? No. That might be the case in very rare situations, but in majority of the cases, they require the availability of job to fulfill their basic needs. Basic needs here are basically, when we talk about it, they are the bodily requirements of food, of shelter, of a place to live in, right? In order to live a meaningful and a purposeful life. So, Sachin, it is something that you can bring to the attention at the end of the session. I'll take it up. I'll try to take it up. But the statement that you have put in, read the statement carefully. It is not contradictory. So there you have in that statement minimum which is used. Okay. So, or rather, at least which is used. So at least doesn't mean only once. It can also mean more than once. That is all I'll tell you right now. So, my mail ID is showing corrupt. Okay, I hope that is not the reflection of the personality involved. But then I'll give you the mail ID, and okay, this is my mail ID. As simple as that. And I hope it is not showing that the person is corrupt or this mail is corrupt. Okay, so this is something which I think most of you will have my mail ID. Most of you who are present here, we have had a regular interaction going ahead. So this is just for the information. Okay. So here, the word Deepika, can we start with quoting Gandhiji's quote here. Gandhiji's quote in this case is very, very apt. That is, the world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. Okay. Many mail ID like Harshmeet sir, Chetan sir, and economic teacher Shyam sir is not working. You might not have the correct mail ID, my dear friend. That might be possible. Everyone's mail ID is working. Okay. So I'll let them know. I'll let each of them know that there it is a kind of a discrepancy, but everybody's mail ID is working fine. And Shanawaz, kindly send a reminder in that case. So here, when we talk about need is not a particular attribute which is endless. It is not a bottomless pit. Need is fulfilled when you have the meaningful living requirements which are met. That is the fulfillment of need, which you can talk about. So, need is related to the body, it has got limitations. Now, it is this need which induces action, which induces aspiration amongst people. So, this is something which induces actions and aspirations. Okay, that induces the actions and aspirations in general. So, that is where you have the need. So, any action that you, any endeavor that you pursue, it is in order to fulfill some or the other need out there. But what happens once that need is fulfilled? Let's suppose you land a job. Now, as of now, in your minds, you might have that kind of a perception that once we clear the civil services examination, our life is sorted. But if you realize and if you look back into your past, you would have had the same kind of idea when you appeared for the class 10th examination, that once I get good marks in 10th examination, my future is sorted. Once I get good marks in 12th boards, my future is sorted. Once I pursue a good branch of, let's say, graduation, my future is sorted. Now it is that once I clear this examination, my future is sorted. Once you clear the examination, then the immediate anxiety will be once I get the desired cadre, my future is sorted. In that cadre, then once I receive that promotion after 4 years, then my future will be a bit sorted. Once I get this kind of a posting, then maybe my future is, so it is never going to sort itself out. So that means once that need is fulfilled, then that morphs itself or metamorphoses itself into a kind of a greed. And greed is born out of desires. Greed is not born out of minimalistic requirements. Greed is something which is born out of desires. Out of desires. Now, these desires can be self induced. These desires can be for the fulfillment of the expectations, right? So the desires can be manifold. But in order to fulfill these desires, that is when the greed comes in. And desires doesn't have a limitation. They don't have a limitation. It is not as if, okay, I right now I have a desire to own the latest electronic gadget or the latest edition of any particular vehicle for that matter, and that is where my desire will end. Let's suppose you find a job. Let's suppose you don't get into civil services, you find a job. Initially your expectation will be, just if I find a job of 50,000 bucks a month, that will be enough to fulfill my requirements. I'll be able to live a meaningful life. Then once you get that, okay, if I get around 1 lakh, that will be the fulfillment of the desires. Then if I earn 2 lakhs, that will be the full. So that is a never ending bottomless pit. And this brings out the various vices. um, Vices in the sense that we talk about the various different vices of humanity that we have talked about. So that is brought about. A penchant for more, accumulation, concentration of wealth, everything comes into that case. Excess of everything is bad, right? And even if the water which we consume frequently could become fatal if we consume in excess, yes, that is correct. Okay. And greed brings, yes, lust is also a kind of a greed. And yes, Manoj, bicycle then goes to bike, then goes to car, and then it again goes ahead. Then Kirubagar, as we grow up, responsibilities will increase, so will the needs, and so will the greed, right? For example, at the setting up of the Central Vigilance Commission, you had the famous adage which was used, that behind every corrupt individual, you have a greedy family which lays behind. So that tells you about the role of individual integrity, how much important role a kind of a greed plays into that. Okay, right? And then Shanavas, here Buddha's teaching of eightfold with respect to attaining nirvana and transfer of Buddha from royal family to normal life while absorbing the four sign. Can we write this? You can write that as an anecdotal story. Yes, you can always. And water conflict between different states is also an example. Yes. And once upon a time, there lived a clever, good, poor farmer. He had an ailing mother. Being sincere and good man, God appeared and asked him to wish. He asked for goose, which lay golden eggs. Right? Yes. So the very basic aspect of the golden goose story, where eventually that golden goose is killed in order to get all that eggs at once, that can also be cited. Ancient history has anecdotes like soldiers becoming rulers. But there you won't find many cases where the greed has, okay, you can find the cases where eventually this greed and this expansionism has led to the destruction of the breed as well. You can talk about that. Politicians greed for power eventually spoils the nation. Okay. The story of resource utilization, are you talking about, Labdi? Yes, you can talk about. And East India Company, we can write. Yes, you can write. So when we talk about breed, we don't necessarily mean the next generation. We also mean the present generation. Why? Because in order to fulfill your desires, you have uh, a kind of a tendency to remain always dissatisfied. Always you have a tendency, and that brings about greater level of inequality in the society as well, isn't it? You have a greater level of unhappiness prevailing in the society, and that society is never good. So that is where it will end up spoiling the breed as well. So needs are the things that we require to live a satisfied life. Now, how to fulfill the needs? Hard work, smart work, competition, resources, these are required to fulfill the need. This is something that everybody basically aspires to lead this. So that is where they are able to, or they are ready to do this. Then it requires us to improve our competence, knowledge, and skills. But when we talk about greed, that is the when you have the enough resources to fulfill the needs. When this is met, once this condition is fulfilled, then comes greed, desire for more. So that will lead to inequality, where the poor goes and becomes poorer, and you have the rich accumulating more and more and becoming richer. Right? Hitler example, you can write. Perfect. You can write that example of Duryodhan in Mahabharata, you can write. But again, when you are touching upon the subjects such as mythology, such as the aspect of any of these, you need to be very sensitive in how you write that. Fourfold truth of Buddhism, you can always create. Food, shelter, clothing turns into sumptuous grand meals, branded clothes, and then well furnished houses. Yes, and that never ends. It goes on increasing. So this brings inequality. This brings in an increased form of frustration. It is that greed which brings about an increased sense of frustration as well. So as I was telling you, and as we had discussed about the victim mentality, right? Victimhood ideology, that we have not been able to achieve what we wanted, what we deserve, right? So once that comes in, then there is nothing which can bring happiness in your life ever. So once your basic desires are fulfilled, then that will be something which will never bring you happiness. So that is what has given rise to casteism. That is what has given rise to significant amount of communalism, significant amount of Naxalism in various parts of the country. So it spoils the breed. And it is the breed and the present and the future generations which suffer the wrath of these unfulfilled desires. You have a kind of an unjust scenario which is created, where the future generations, they are in a way, they are forced to adhere to those unfulfilled desires, and they are forced to fulfill those unfulfilled desires. Okay, now then we come to another topic. After industrial revolution, the concern for every work was growth to fulfill need and greed, hence environment is exploited. Yes, you can also talk about sustainable development here. Sustainable development, that how it gives you an idea about utilizing the resources judicially in the present term, so that you can also have a significant amount of use in the future. Okay, so middle path, yes, you can talk about that as well, right? Is it necessary to write subheadings in the body? Again, I would repeat, it is up to you. It is not required to be, or it is not something which is necessitated by the examination pattern. You have people who have scored particularly well, who have not written any of these any of these subheadings. So it is not a perfect requirement, right? And the story of mother of Lord Ram agreed to make her son Bharat as king of Ayodhya. But did it spoil the breed in that matter, in that course of time? So that is why I always tell you, be very sensitive how you handle the mythological issues. You might never know that the evaluator there might get very, very touchy with this, or any aspect of religious quotation, etc., or mythology that you are talking about. You might never know if the evaluator takes upon that kindly as kindly upon that or not. Socialism can never turn into communism. People are not ready to share equal resources with unequal effort. Similarly, the state is also not ready to wither away. So, okay, many of us have not understood the meaning of this particular quotation. So, once again, I will stress upon this. So, Ziba, you have put a good point here, perfect point here. And Bhubi, please explain the meaning of breed here. So, breed refers to the fellow human beings that you have, that is, your compatriots and the general civilization, and also the future generation, right? So, for example, let's suppose a very simplistic example that you see around yourself in the society. In the society, you will find that you will have one of those people who will work incredibly hard day and night to make a living for themselves. They would have come from very hard and atrocious background, to say the least. They would have a situation where they would go to bed empty belly, right? They would not have food to eat. They would have worked incredibly hard. They would have turned their profession into a large empire, and then their future generation, they waste no time in squandering all that money away. isn't it? You would have come across many such examples in your locality, in your region itself. So that is basically the breed, the future generation, how it gets spoiled because of the greed that the earlier generation had, right? So because of that, they could not pay attention to the values. So in the desire to achieve the greed, so when you have the desire to achieve the greed, to achieve the greed, values and morality are put at stake. And that basically means you have breed, that is the future generation, gets spoiled. Even the present generation, they get spoiled. And this, because of this, interpersonal relationships, relations, environment, self discovery, future course of action, everything is impacted. Yes, Tushar, that can be used. Uh, yes, Manoj, that poem, that is Rashmi Rathi. So I hope you are quoting that Krishna asking five villages for Pandavas, but even this Duryodhan when could not give, it destroyed all his breed. So you can quote that. The poem also you can quote here if you remember that. If you, but obviously that is a poem that is once you go through it, it is very difficult to forget it because that is how impactful it can be. But then if you remember it, reproduce it. It is worth producing that. Misbah, you have a very innocent question. Why I say innocent is that, okay, I'll read it out. When I saw the sheet of essay like Tina Dabe, Srushti Deshmukh, etc., that's like it is impossible to write like this. How they write so good essay as like they had prepared on that essay earlier. So why I say that this question is very innocent. Did you get a chance or an opportunity to look at the essay that they wrote in the mains exam themselves? No, obviously, unless and until you are there in DOPT, you don't get that opportunity. So you don't know what is the essay that they have written in the examination. So the essay that you have gone through, that is the essay that they would have written for sample tests, or in many of the cases, after clearing the examination, the candidates, many of the institutes, they are asked to write certain sample papers, certain sample essays, and they are paid for that. I'm not saying that concentrate on the portion of the pay, but let's suppose you are today you have cleared the exam, and I give you 1 day to create an essay for me. Now, the essay that you will write will be better than an editorial as well, because by that point of time, you would have gained so much amount of confidence. This entire game is about confidence. And the day that you understand it, your fear level, your anxiety level will automatically come down. It is about that confidence which drives. If you are confident enough that I know better than the others, the essay that you write will be much more impactful and meaningful. The answer that you will write will be much more meaningful and impactful. The dialogue delivery that you will give in the interview panel, any interview panel, once you have cleared the exam, after that, observe these people giving media interviews and look at their sample interviews in certain cases. You'll find a stark difference. So that is driven by confidence, that is driven by the preparation. So don't worry about it. Tomorrow, if let's suppose you clear the examination, maybe 2 years down the line, somebody else will ask that I cannot reproduce the essay like she has produced. So you only know the names of these few people. but there are 100 other people or 98 other people in the top 100. Let's suppose you don't get 155. At least you can strive for 150. You can strive for 145. Try for that. Don't worry, it will come. Okay. And again, don't go for greed. uh, See, the entire poem, Bhumi, is Rashmirati. The entire poem is very large. I'm just talking about that conversation, that conversation of Krishna, or Lord Krishna, as he has with Duryodhan. So, about when he asks for those five villages, and when he asks for justice. Right. So, Rashmirati is actually a book by Ramdhari Singh Dinkar. So I don't know how many of you have read it. It is one of the good books. So, but then there, that excerpt of the poem is what I am referring to. Okay, and greed of human to taste as much as they can lead to the killing of animals. No, that will be an extreme. It is not because, see, the killing of animals is not because um, many of them want to taste different things. In certain cases, you can say that, but it is not about uh, the complete aspect that, okay, we want to taste camels, so from today we will start consuming camels itself. Many of the time, it is born out of the basic need for food as well. Okay, but you can talk about how we exploit nature. You can talk about that. And I hope you understand that we might have talked about this in geography as well. So you might have understood that the food habits and the food patterns that we have in many parts of the world, including the killing of animals, is born out of necessity, because in those areas you don't have plants. We in India, we have the ideal condition to be uh, complete vegetarian if we choose to be, because we have all the various different crops, products, fruits, vegetables which keep on growing. But think about the Nordic countries, think about the North European, West European nations, think about the West Asian regions where you have the desertified lands. So that is where it comes from. We can see a lot of things need transform into greed due to excess want, and then causes addiction. This addiction impacts the young minds and force them under belief of exploration to experience it. Yes, and with this you can talk about the pervasive drug addiction and drug culture that is prevalent in many parts of the country. You can talk about that as well. Yes. Okay. Can we include the example of Aurangzeb? No, not the example of Aurangzeb, but the example of the Mughals. Okay, Ashish, understand the difference between the two. It is not Aurangzeb who was very greedy. It was the entire Mughal dynasty, which at a point of time they became greedy to leave a lasting foothold. Now, initially, they wanted to establish themselves in order to survive, because Babur had no place which he could call home. He was ousted from his home as well. So, in a way, they wanted to establish themselves. Slowly, they wanted to establish themselves for enough time that they would not be compared to the Lodhis and the Delhi Sultanate before that, that they came and they went. But slowly and steadily, that went ahead to the accumulation of riches to such an extent that it did spoil the breed. Yes. Yes, Rahul, you can use that. Right. And every somebody's greed may impact others' breed. Human race of expansion, spoiling flora and fauna's breed. Technology is a need right now, but excessive of technology. So here, yes, you can talk about the national policies as well. So, for example, Mithilesh, you are correct to point out that when we talk about this at the level of, so you can expand it at the level of society as well. When you expand it at the level of the society, you can get pointers. For example, initially the society wants a peaceful coexistence. That is the initial stage. Once that peaceful coexistence is attained, then sections of the society, they aim for or they vie for supremacy, dominance, that we need to be the dominant factor. And that is where the greed comes in. And once that greed comes in, that is where the social discrimination comes, the social ostracization comes. That is where you will have ill treatment of each others. That is when you will have preconceived notions, misconceptions, and that will spoil the breed. Okay. Maslow's need theory can be talked about. Yes. Alexander the Great, he was definitely greedy. Yes. And this particular topic, when you expand it at the level of the nation state, so understand all these points that I'm talking about. It is not something that I'm conjuring out of thin air. These are your point of views. All that you need to do is put them into paper. That is all that I'm asking you to do. Right? It is as simple as that. You might get overwhelmed when you see a particular topic, but that is what the fear, once you overcome it, that is it. That is the end of the game. Right? So don't let that fear empower you. So, here, first of all, when we talk about the nation, now think about a nation like China. China is an ideal example. Mithilesh pointed out rightly. So, when you talk about China here, China initially started from that victim mentality that we had been oppressed quite significantly. India had also been oppressed. But it is now that we are slowly developing that mentality. But then overall, India was determined that, okay, we have been oppressed, but then we need the perfect kind of need to be fulfilled, first of all. Now, China, in order to fulfill its need for global acceptance, it started reaching out to nations. So once the nations, they reached out to China, once they accepted that relationship, the greed increased, that we should be the only dominant relations and we should only be the dominant economic factor. And what has that done? That has destroyed the breed in terms of the impression that China carries, the people of China. Now, wherever they go, it is not a very, a kind of a very, let's say, beneficial relationship, or not a very positive impression that people in the various countries have. Chinese immigrants have been going to various parts of the world, and rich immigrants. They are one of the most well-to-do set of immigrants. They have been going to various parts of the world in order to find work, employment, etc. But now the world is turning hostile to them. Why? Because of their greed. Okay. So, Ajay, I hope you get the example. Pakistan at a stage of bankruptcy. So initially, their need was to bolster their defense to be to confront a large neighbor as India. But then slowly that greed came, that territorial greed came, and slowly and steadily, with that greed, what has happened? The entire breed has been destroyed, with significant amount of fundamentalism, with a significant amount of seclusion which has been met out at the nation, and you see the condition. Right? Green Revolution can be another example. Perfect, very good. East India Company and Britishers, you can. Right? So that is basically the aspect. Greed is not a financial issue, it's a heart issue. That is correct. So that is basically what you can highlight here. Then the process of self discovery has now been technologically outsourced. What do we mean by this? First of all, process of self discovery has now been technologically outsourced. Think about it. Let me know the meaning. All these ideas coming from GS portion only, I thought we need to study something different to write an essay. Absolutely not. Why would you need to study something different? Essay is the expression of all the ideas that you have. It is about compilation of those ideas. So better you are at the coverage of general studies, better you will be in writing the essay. But obviously, the writing skill needs to be worked as well. Outsourcing of resources, not understood. Okay. Making people lazier by the day. Uh, it is about the uses of social media these days. Yes. Knowing ourselves with the help of technology. Okay. It is a debatable topic. Yes, it can be. ChatGPT. In the era of mobile phones, we lose our capacity to think by our own. Everything is influenced by technology or mobile phones. People get to know about themselves based upon others' opinion. Yes, digital book help us. Is outsourced means old? No. Self time consumed by social media, AI, technology led to discovery now. People used to communicate before, yes. So, if you know, you know. Okay, we lost the culture. Outsource is when you give that task to someone else to perform. Platforms helping us to reach out things in an easy way, yes. Technology just changed the process of thinking. Okay, so let us think about it for a brief moment, and then we will. So you can do one thing. There are a couple of topics here. I'll tell you the meaning of this, and any of these topics, I want you to think about it and write an essay about it. Okay, I will tell you the detailed meaning of each of them. Don't worry about it. But after that, I want you to use this as a kind of a practice. All these are PYQs, by the way. The process of self discovery has now been technologically outsourced. Now, first of all, this is something which is vertically expandable at individual, the level of the society, the level of the nation as well. Okay. Now, what is the meaning? Meaning is that this is technologically outsourced. Outsourced meaning is that you give the task to someone else. So basically, the process of this self discovery, which was very personal earlier, now it is totally reliant or dependent on technology. Okay, so something which was very much personal, something which was significantly restricted, that has been given out technologically, handed out technologically to someone else. Whom? The technology in itself. So for example, here when we talk about ourselves, now in our case as well, many of the times earlier you would have seen that the aspect of meditation used to be such a prized task, and meditation used to be one of those tasks where you would have that self discovery, that self belief, that self knowledge. Had Gautam Buddha managed to survive in today's world, he would basically would have downloaded an app to attain enlightenment rather than go there and sit underneath a banyan tree. Right? Why? Because that is the course of technology that we have presently. So if you want to know what you should consume, if you want to know what your behavior is, if you want to know that whether as a person you are outspoken, whether you are outgoing, extrovert, introvert, you have apps for that, you have technology for that. So where is that aspect of self discovery? Gone down the dumps, right? In the case of the family, now, even in the case of the family, large family setups, or think about the social setup. Social setup will be more apt here. So, when we think about the social setups, now there also, when you think about the society, earlier, when any individual would move into the society, people would meet them, greet them, and there would be healthy interactions which would be carried on sustainably. But then nowadays, what do you have? You have the technology which dominates. So I have reached out to them via social media. They have not replied or they have not liked my comments or pictures. So that is the end of our friendship. So that is all. You barely get a chance to know each other. That humane aspect in humanity, that is being put to waste, isn't it? Even in the case of nation. Now, nation, what the nation is. So, for example, when Mahatma Gandhi came to India, I hope we are all aware that initially for the 2 years, he did not participate in any of the agitation, in any of the movements. He went on a kind of a, so to say, rail trip across the entirety of the country. That was a process of self discovery for the nation. And it was something which was prescribed to him by none other than the stalwart Gokhale himself, where Gokhale said that in order to understand the nation, first of all, you need to discover the nation. And that is where he went ahead with the entire exploration. Then he understood what are the various different aspirations of the people, what are the various aspirations which get suppressed, right? So that is when he was able to represent the voices of the oppressed in a much better manner. He was able to express those voices in a much more representative manner. So that is where the process of self discovery has now been technologically outsourced. Now you have video conferencing, which will do the same. But will you be able to understand the pain of an individual by technology? No. If you sit in front of someone and someone recounts their own struggles, you will feel much more connected. But will you feel the same amount of connect by reading a post on social media? No. So this has given rise to a lot of whataboutery. This has given rise to a lot of illusion, lot of fake illusion, right? Where you have a superfluous feeling which keeps on moving from one place to another, no aspect for humanity, etc. Right? So that is where you have to understand what this particular essay topic is. Now, we have talked about the vertical expansion. Now, it hinders the creativity and qualities to be explored. Yes. So here, you also get to, in a way, you get to uh, express or you get to experience the fact that the essence of humanity is being lost. Essence of humanity is being lost. Okay. So here you have to elaborate on the requirement of self discovery and also the role of technology. Self discovery is required. Why? In order to achieve fulfillment in life, be it for yourself, in order to attain your capacity, in order to perform at the level of your capacity, in order to attain your goals, ideals, you need that process of self discovery. That is also required at the level of society in order to have a co living, a harmonious existence. For that, also self discovery is required in order to carry out a course correction, in order to understand whether you have been going wrong and you need to correct the course. So, there also self discovery is required, isn't it? So, self discovery, the requirement of it. Okay. So, fulfillment of one's own goals and ideals, then self realization, then after that, course correction. Now, course correction can be done at the level of the society as well, at the level of the nation as well. Understand that. Course correction is something which is prevalent at all these levels. So, vertical expansion will happen in all these levels. Now, the role of technology. So, we have talked about the role of technology creating perceptions, scope for misinformation, a larger connect in the name of connection, disconnect rather, name of connection, right? So that is something which also gives a scope for misunderstanding, misconceived notions as well, right? So this gives rise to, it can give rise to a lot of stereotypes, existing prejudices, and inequalities to be exploited furthermore. So gives rise to exaggerated inequalities, stereotypes, and prejudices. Pratima, if we take a realistic example of our Indian politics took for any suitable ones, is it good or bad in case we implement this? So don't go for name calling. Many of us, we are so very swayed by this that we immediately go for name calling. That XYZ political party, what they are doing is absolutely wrong, etc., etc. Don't go for that. So, as long as you are avoiding extremities and name calling, fair enough. Everything is fair in that. Then, Anusha, is your question is how, so how it gives rise to exaggerated inequalities and prejudices. So it gives rise to these inequality or prejudices and stereotypes because in the present day of technology and AI, you will find that whatever you believe, that is something that you get. Whatever your belief system is, whatever your thought process is, when you open up, let's say, news headlines on Google, you will get the same set of news, same ideological bend of news. When you open up any, let's say, your YouTube page, the recommendations that you get, this is the easiest example, the recommendations that you will get will adhere to your belief system. So that continues to strengthen your belief system. That makes you more stereotypical. That makes you more prejudiced. And that will alter your decision making process. Okay. So that is basically impacts the decision making. Decision making. Okay. The best way to find oneself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Yes, that is another quotation that UPSC had asked. You can talk about it. Sushmita, in 1200 words. Yes, you have to write it in 1200 words, but not needed that you will fill the 1200 word. Generally, people will write in 1000, 1100 words. That is the general extent of the essay. Uh, Yes, you can talk about the role player. Deepika, you can talk about the role played by movies in propagating these misunderstandings and misinformation. Yes, you can always talk about that. So that is what we mean by this. But here, you also need to explore the aspect. Yes, political agendas are driven by the social media, and that is where the fifth generation warfare also comes into the picture, but don't go into that extent or extremity. Here you also need to explore the positive role of technology. That technology also has got a positive role to play. Okay, technology need not necessarily have a complete negative aspect. How it can bring about, when we have a technologically outsourced one, that can bring about greater level of equality or level of inclusivity, access, health benefits, education benefits, justice, all of that, scientific temper, all of that you can talk about. That how people who were earlier disenfranchised from many particular parts or many particular fruits of the social upbringing, now they have started becoming a member of that. They have started taking a part in that. So, yes, you can use that. Employment generated due to technology, yes, how humans have offloaded their consciousness to external factors like technology, yes. So here we have to write this essay in 1200 or as much as we can. Try to write it in 1000 or 1100 words. Fictional character play important role to prevail the person towards fake and misinformation. Yes, correct. Now, how do you conclude that? So when you conclude this particular type of essay, you have to talk about that how While this has significantly led to a moral degradation at the level of the individual, at the level of the society, and the level of the nation state, it has also impacted our future decision making, also holding a potential to impact the future generations and the level of exposure that the future generations have with the real world scenario. That is where you have a greater amount of problems arising, because now, rather than finding the solution, people are more concerned in amping up or amplifying the level of dispute. So dispute resolution has taken a back seat. So that is where you can talk about, and still in the conclusion only you have to write, but at the end of the day, technology can also be a powerful medium to empower the masses. So ideally, one has to ensure that both humanity and technology, they not only coexist, but humanity drives the technology forward, and that can bring the betterment of the entirety of the society. So that is something that you can write. Okay. Yes, sensitivity, tolerance, everything is decreasing. You can write charity online. Yes. Okay. So this is understood, I gather. Now, after this, your perception of me is a reflection of you. My reaction to you is an awareness of me. So, what do you understand as the meaning? Shiva, absolutely yes. That some people are not reading the respective scriptures and believing everything the reels in social media tells them. Yes. So, misinformation spreads. Yes, Manoj. So, what is the meaning of this? What is it that you understand? The person sees what he wants to see himself. What we see in others is a picture of ourselves. Good. What you think of me reflects your mindset, and how I react to it shows my mindset. Yes. I'll behave like you behave with me. No. No. Whatever we see, whatever we believe, it talks about Yashpal rather than self control. This is the one which talks about a significant, to a significant degree, about emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. So, what is EI? EI is basically the capacity to understand and gauge what your feeling will be, what others' feeling will be, and then respond accordingly. Not everything deserves an immediate stimuli or an immediate reaction. You don't have to be reactionary in life, right? So, your perception of me is a reflection of you. So, how you perceive me, how you take a look at me, world is nothing but a mirror, right? So how we see the world is basically dependent on what our thought process is. That is why I tell you, even when we write the conclusion, remember I told you that any conclusion that you write should always be optimistic in nature, should always be optimistic, always should have a positive note. Now, in the same country, when we take a look at around at our political setup, in the sense that how the politics operates, if we take a look at the bitterness which has prevailed in the politics, if let's suppose we take the case of certain areas facing disturbances, poverty, etc., we can absolutely get very pessimistic and disheartened. But at the same time, people can take a look at the same country, look at the amount of diversity not to be found anywhere else in the world. Anywhere else in the world, you won't find that diversity, and that diversity which is naturally present here, not something which has been immigrated from somewhere. No, that diversity is naturally present here. That diversity that you see, that unique landscape that you see, the massive path to growth that we have achieved in the past 75 years of our independence. Observe that. 75, 76 years of our independence. If you observe that, now in all these, you'll find optimism. So it depends upon the prism that you lay your eyes upon, what you look at. Okay, so when, let's suppose, you some individual comes to you with a kind of a getup, let's suppose. So, and that getup is that of a shabbily dressed man or a shabbily dressed individual, where you don't know that person's background, and you immediately judge the book by its cover, that this person won't be having any mannerisms, he won't have a particular way of talking, etc., he would be very poor, etc. You make that conclusion just purely by looking at them. So that is your perception of them, and that is a reflection of you, who you are. That is a reflection of your shallow mindset, right? But then my reaction to you is an awareness of me. So when, let's suppose, I receive an external stimuli, someone, let's suppose, insults me. Now, how do I respond to that? That is in my control. How you perceive me is never going to be in my control. But how I respond to that, that is in my control. And that is where I can choose to be humble. I can choose to be arrogant. I can choose to be very significantly modest. I can choose to be happy. I can choose to be sad. So that is dependent on how aware I am, what is the level of the emotional intelligence that I have. Okay. So this can be expanded vertically. Let me talk about it here itself. That vertical expansion at the individual level, level of the society, level of the nation. At the individual level, how the individual responds to external stimuli, how the society responds, and how you perceive a society, and how the society perceives others, right? You have closed societies out there who don't welcome any outsiders. You have very, very closed social setups where no outsiders are welcome. So that is a reaction or reflection of that society. But then, because they perceive the others in the wrong notion, but then how they react, how the society reacts, is an awareness of that society. So you can bring about the aspect of the social discord, social harmony, etc., in this aspect. Okay. Then nation, can we say that it refers to prejudice? Yes. uh, we try to understand and analyze people based on what we have done. Does he have what we have? Okay, yes. Instead of instant reaction, we need to respond to particular situation. Yes, right. A poetry, Shiva. Yes, you can use those lines. Beautiful lines. Manipur clash is a case of that reaction. Yes. Okay. So world is a mirror. Mirror. Okay. So here, my reaction to you is an awareness. So that talks about the need to, first of all, understand when to react and why to react. You need to understand that. That is where the role of EI comes in. So that talks about your upbringing, your background, right? Your level of awareness, your level of exposure that you have. So, at the level of the nation also, right? How we perceive another nation state can be dependent upon our past perceptions, can be dependent on our past experiences, and that is what drives the impression forward. Is that understood? Can you write? And I don't want to hand out everything here. I want you to explore this a bit on your own as well. Will you be able to think about this on your own? Uh, Moina, how withdrawing of Chori Chora will you fit here? Can you think about this essay on your own? or is there where you need a detailed understanding? Satyam, yes. Often people have friends that has something common within both. Unconsciously, we try to make perception based upon our thoughts and principles. How Kautilya, uh, okay, Ilma, did Kautilya look at Ashoka? I know I'm not a history faculty here. I know you have covered the portion of history, but you have said how Kautilya looked to Ashoka. Did Kautilya and Ashoka were the contemporaries? Think about it. Don't commit such mistakes. Okay. Um, Labdeep, yes, Babur, after seeing big army of Ibrahim Lodi, worked patiently and won. Yes. India not doing any terror attack. India not retaliating, rather than India not doing terror attack. It is not. So you can talk about how India has never been expansionist in terms of land control, while China has been carrying out that kind of a salami slicing policy where it has sliced away some portion of the land. So here, awareness of me is about the self control. It is about the aspect of also emotional intelligence. Okay. Also understand the type of upbringing, background, and more than that, exposure, education. Vivekananda's example of not reacting to a slang can be the perfect case in that. India not supporting the war and India's image as a peacemaker, yes. Okay, right, good. So we have more or less talked about this. I want you to think a bit more on this on your own. Any issues that you face, bring that to me, don't worry. And then in this also you can go for a direct introduction, use the multiple quotations that you have, right? And or anecdotal story about Vivekananda that we have talked about in the earlier case, that how when he visited the ghats of Varanasi, some uh, individual random chap started hurling abuses and he simply did not take it. Muna, which is the topic that you did not understand, the previous one or the present one? Is this topic understood about the perception of me is a reflection on you? Is this topic understood? Okay. This topic is still not understood. How many people have still not understood this topic? Please let me know. Okay. Okay. Think about it with the help of example. If I tell you have understood the meaning but not understood how to write it. So in these kinds of topics, always advisable that if you are unable to expand it significantly, first of all go for the direct interpretation, the direct meaning of this, right? So that direct meaning, so your perception of me is a reflection of you. Let me cite it with the help of examples. So for example, let's suppose an individual comes near you, let's suppose, and that individual comes near you. You would have seen multiple different advertisements for the for the purpose as well, multiple different short movies and short films for this as well. An individual comes to you, let's suppose, in order to point out something that you might have as an issue or something, in order to help you out. But then If you are wary of random strangers walking up to you, you might be very hostile to that individual, right? So that person came with a good intention, but you are hostile to it. So your perception towards that individual was a reflection of you, your individual attribute. But then, if you are hostile to that individual, that particular guy can again be hostile to you back again, or that individual guy can be gentle enough and let it go. So, the my reaction to you is an awareness of me. So, how aware I am. So that is the awareness. So here you can, if you have to expand it, here you can talk about what drives perception, what are the limitations to expand the perceptions, what gives rise to misconceptions. You can talk about the reflection of you part, that how is it that individual stimuli and individual reactions, they are not random, they are also dependent upon the past expressions and the past expectations that one has, the past experiences that one gains, isn't it? And then my reaction to you. So the reaction can be of many types. Reaction need not always be physical. Reaction can have a mental attribute as well. You say something and then you leave. But in my mind, I might be left in a lurch, in a turmoil. So that is my reaction to your slang or your whatever thing that you have said. So basically, that has created a kind of a reaction. So, how I react. So, what are the ways of reaction? Here you can again expand it vertically. How the nation reacts, how the society reacts to any instigation is an awareness of me. So, awareness is of me is what? How aware we are, how sensitive we are, how emotionally intelligent we are, what is the emotional quotient that we have, right? Then that is dependent on what? That in itself will be dependent on the maybe the amount of education that we have, the amount of exposure that we have to the outside world, and the different types of people that we have met, how open as a society we are. That will make us more accepting for the outsiders or more close towards outsiders. Is that understood now, or is there a doubt which still prevails? Moina, I hope now you understood, and Misbah also, how to expand it. Stuti, good. When we think in respect to the nation, we can go for social, economic, political, yes, if it fits the bill. Okay? Is that understood, or the problem still prevails? Abhishek, Sumit, example related to it. Let's suppose we talk about the aspect of, let's say, uh, the last part of it. So let's say that India being instigated consistently with the help of various different terrorist attacks. Now, every time a terrorist attack happens, does not mean immediately India will also retaliate with another terrorist attack, right? So that is where now India chooses its own response. Now, at the time of 1971 war, there was a large-scale exodus of people being driven to India. India chose its step very carefully. India did not react immediately. It is our reaction which separates us, which makes us human, which separates us from the animal kingdom. If you throw, or let's suppose you instigate a dog, let's suppose, or a stray dog. If you instigate them, immediately they will bark or they will run away, right? If we also represent the same characteristic, our level of awareness is particularly low. So that is where our awareness portion comes into the picture. Okay. What should be the conclusion? The conclusion of this topic should always go into the aspect of how the essence of life is about exploration, about understanding others, about being humane to others. That will come with a greater level of awareness and so on. Okay, right? Can I conclude that both statement means the same perception, reflection of you, reaction, awareness of me? That both the statements mean that our reaction is based on our awareness. That won't be So very good. You can have a better way to conclude about or think about it. India taking neutral stance on Russia-Ukraine war despite being forced by developed nation. Yes. So the Western nations, they have consistently been instigating us, but how we respond to them, right? Expanding such topic to 1,000 words while continuously sticking with the topic with 1.5 hours is not possible. So that is where, yes, you can think about it, that in these kind of topics, the test is your ability to understand. Many of the people would not have understood this topic in the midst of the examination condition itself. So that is the major challenge, that whether you are able to understand the topic or not. How to conclude that EI should be included in the question or in the answer? So that is where you have to talk about that what makes us human is our ability to have or be compassionate towards others, our ability to understand others' pain points and problems, and empathize with the same going ahead, going forward. So that is how you can harp upon the portion of or talk about the portion of that EI in a tangential manner. Amrit, for writing an essay, 45 minutes is more than enough, so it's better to brainstorm more. That is what I always say. The more time that you spend in brainstorming or rough work. So, for this essay, all of us combined, we have spent close to around 15-20 minutes, right? So, that 20 minutes you spend in brainstorming, you think about it, what can be written. And when you are sitting there silently and just continuously thinking about it, that will come with practice, by the way. And at that point of time, not letting your mind divert, that today after the exam, when I go home, I would have written a good essay, then I will prepare for the other optional paper. Today I will do one thing, I will finish that optional paper portion that is left. If you don't allow your mind to veer off, essay paper is pretty relaxed. Think about it, in the essay paper, combined you have to write around 2000 words in 3 hours. In GS paper, you are expected to write 3000 to 4000 words in 3 hours. So the task there is much more daunting. Yes, Deepika, you can write that. Mithilesh, scope of this topic seems very small, less than the demand of the question. Scope is not significant, but then you can think about it. When we talk about the level of society, then social harmony, communal strife, sectarian violence, all of this arises, all these problems arise from what? Reaction, immediate reaction, right? When you talk about, let's suppose, at the level of nation, international, or foreign policy, foreign policy, here. Now, in that case, what will you observe? So, there also you can drive with certain examples. We have taken those examples. If we talk about issues such as radicalism and fundamentalism, here you can also talk about national security. Okay, so these are your interpretations, but maximum attention you have to pay at the individual level. You have to talk about the importance of perception. What is perception? Perception driven by what, or influenced by what? Then limitations, to perception. Okay. Then you have to talk about reactions. What kind of reactions? At an individual level, at the level of the society, at the level of the nation. Why those reactions? Influenced by what? Need to have or need to for a measured reaction or response. Okay, why is it that the you need to have a measured response? Then after that, reaction is driven by emotional quotient. So what is EQ? Why important? Okay. Then after that, what limitations to EQ and what are the outcomes? Then awareness driven by what? Limitations, right? So I hope now you get enough scope to write. Now can you write at least 800, 900 words out of this? I wanted you guys to do this work. But then fair enough. Any issues that you have in right now, anyways, the class time is over, so everybody will say, just get rid of this. I will write whatever you say. Just but take this in all seriousness, in the sense that I want you to be able to think in this manner. See, model answers you will get from anywhere and everywhere. Anywhere in the market you go, you get that model answer. But it is that ability to think that I'm seeking out of you. Okay, good, good to go. Fair enough. Examples on national security. For example, let's suppose the instigation that happens, let's suppose in the region of Eastern Ladakh. So, as a response to that, will we start bolstering our defenses only on the region of Eastern Ladakh, or will we develop across the northern areas? Will we restrict ourselves only to the upgradation of infrastructure, or do we go for the theaterization of command as the country is going for? So, that is your reaction. That is an awareness of me, awareness as a nation, what needs to be done. Okay, right? Abhishek, there are some issues into this, and there is no point going into those issues because obviously, so there has been significant amount of inventory which has also been destroyed in the Yamuna floods. But then, nonetheless, we are working to provide that digital notes online of all the various books, and we are working on it in a to provide that in a very short span of time. You will get that access. Don't worry. India without knowing a weakness cannot go to war. Okay, right? So, can I conclude essay with that perception comes from values and values from emotion? Yes, yes. Okay. So, that is where we'll restrict the session here and we meet again tomorrow and we will take a look into the portion of one more topic, but then after that, the GS portion. And we will have an extra session on Saturday, guys, for the session that we missed on Monday. That will be the last session. So that will be all from my side. Significant amount of gratitude for the patience and kind hearing. Till we meet again. Goodbye. Thank you.